Welcome everyone to Tarvold's Perspective, a show where I do a deep dive on a game or a series that I love, give my honest opinions and thoughts about it, slap it into a tier list. And there's not many series out there that I love more than Final Fantasy, if any at all for that matter. Since the very first title on the NES, I have loved this series wholeheartedly. So let's start from the very beginning with this game right here. And this one too. And this one also. And this one. Oh yeah, this one too. This one was a weird one. Yeah, that was weird. And also, this guy right here. Oh my god. Yeah, sorry for being that guy, but let's face it, I am. Let's talk about Final Fantasy. I'm sure after that intro you're wondering which version of this game I've played, and my answer is yes. Square is obviously very proud of their baby here, and has re-released this game many times across many platforms, with the most recent version being the Pixel Remaster. The majority of the footage in this episode will be from that version, since the visuals pop real nice in widescreen and is fresh in my memory. But I've played almost every version of this game that exists. I started on my cousin's copy of the NES original, then moved on to the PS1 version in Final Fantasy Origin, which was the version that really solidified my love for this title. Eventually I got my hands on Dawn of Souls on the GBA, and much later in life I got the PSP version, which kicked off my Final Fantasy marathon on Twitch, and also inspired me to start this series as well. But I'm getting sidetracked here. As for which version of this game is my favorite, well, we'll get into that later on, but to be honest, I love them all. I haven't played the more obscure versions like the Wonder Swan or MSX2, and only while researching for this episode did I learn there was a 3DS version hidden in copies of Final Fantasy Explorers. But from what I can tell, it's like the PSP version with some 3D slapped into it to take advantage of the 3DS hardware. There's also the mobile version, but
that's disgusting. Don't talk like that.
Regardless which version you're playing though, the game will always greet you with this. The Prelude, the most beautiful series of bleeps and bloops that is seared into my memory. Typically playing during the title screen of many titles throughout the series, this theme of the crystals is immediately recognizable to every Final Fantasy fan on the planet. It is no doubt one of Nobuo Uematsu's most emotional, transcendent, and deeply thought out themes he's ever written. Okay. Alright, so apparently he just slapped this together in 10 minutes and squeezed it in at the last second. No, that's fine. My greatest creation also took me less than 10 minutes to make. Love you, son. As you're being serenaded by this arpeggio, you're immediately faced with by far the hardest and most important decision you'll ever make on your entire journey. Who you're going to be partying with for this adventure. What you're looking at here is the introduction of what is known as the job system. Your 4 main adventurers must permanently commit to one of the 6 main jobs Final Fantasy has to offer. The fighter or warrior, who can equip most armor and weapons and has a beefcake disposition which comes with a ton of defense and HP to serve as both a great tank and a huge source of physical damage. It almost feels absolutely necessary to have one of these Goliaths in the party, since a vast majority of the equipment you find can only be used by them and everyone else eats damage like a mukbanger. I definitely recommend leading your party with this Scarlet Soldier. The Black Belt, otherwise known as Monk, is essentially a glass cannon for physical damage, dealing out an insane amount without any weapon whatsoever, but absolutely hates wearing clothes or armor. Dudes is just naked out there hammer fisting his enemies with pure BDE. Because of this though, monks really cannot take a hit and go down rather fast with a shallow HP pool compared to the warrior. Fun to use for experienced players though, for sure. The White Mage's sole job is to keep your party feeling good about themselves and also alive. Utilizing white magic, they're able to heal damage taken as well as various status effects that monsters can inflict on the party, such as stone, blind, or most annoyingly, poison. They can also just rip a fat Aurora Borealis right here in the kitchen and wipe out an entire party of undead enemies. They also can take a bit of a beating with a rather large HP pool. You'll never regret having at least one of them on your team, believe that. The Black Mage is the master of black magic, powerful spells that disintegrate enemies with the elements, and most importantly, can hit multiple targets in a single turn, which can make getting through some of the tougher areas and encounters a breeze. Nothing feels better than seeing a pack of Frostwolves get instantly melted by a Fire 2 spell and watching the Gillen experience come raining down on your team smelling like charred canine. They have a mitt full of weaknesses, however, which include a piss poor HP pool, terrible defense, and their magic spells are finite and can only be cast so many times a day before their utility dries up entirely. Still though, they got mad blasts! The Red Mage is a weaker version of a Warrior, White Mage, and Black Mage wrapped into one kinda underwhelming package. They can use most of the armor and weapons a Warrior can, and most of the magic the White and Black Mages can, but can never use the best of any of it. I could be alone here, but I never saw the appeal for this class at all. I used one once, and that was enough for me. They just don't stand out at all, and in the late game, the diversity of their abilities means almost nothing for a certain reason which I'll touch on later. Running 4 of these could be fun though. The Thief sucks, like rightfully and truly sucks, which is unfortunate because thieves are friggin' rad and are one of my favorite jobs in future titles. Despite what you think, they can't steal anything. And in the earliest version of the game, the stats that are supposed to make the thief good don't even work. In theory, having a thief makes you more likely to be able to flee from battles or prevent being ambushed and improve your odds of a preemptive strike. But really, I never felt any meaningful difference with one on my team. They can use the weaker weapons and armor and can't take much of a hit either. However, the main reason you'd ever have a thief on your team at all is for the late game benefits. But you're sewering your early game efficiency by taking one along. For my latest run through the Pixel Remaster, I took on the role of the buff man in red since I'm the man in the red buff, obviously. I got my girl Doc to keep the squad rolling as healthy as can be, and she got her MD from the prestigious Jack's Goblins University. I got my man Hands to slam every flan with his JoJo stand spam without a single band of flannel to cover his manly strand. And the master of the arcane farts, Blasty, who was the inspiration for Chris Nolan's Oppenheimer. True story. From here, you get a brief glimpse at the state of the planet. The world lies shrouded in darkness. The winds die. The seas rage. Though I'm not sure how when the winds are dead. Maybe the sea is just really pissed off. The earth decays. But there is a prophecy. When darkness veils the world, 4 warriors of light shall come. And just like that, it's game time. You're plopped right into the kingdom of Cornelia as the 4 warriors of light, each holding one of the crystals of the elements. Your quest is about to unfold. You will face horrifying, nightmarish dangers, travel the earth, seas, and sky, and test your resilience and spirit as you try to put an end to the fiends plaguing this world. But before all that, shopping spree, baby! I'm gonna learn some spells, only got 1,000 gil in my satchel. I'm just a squire, looking for some fire, thieves are fucking awful. No, but for real, these light warriors start with some absolute garbo equipment. And if you want to survive out there, you're going to need to get some weapons and armor, and especially some magic for your mages immediately. And if you've got a monk on your team, I wasn't joking earlier about them wanting to be naked. They actually deal less damage the more armor they have on. So another benefit with them is that they're incredibly cost efficient at staying optimal. Nice little perk for this fist fighting jerk. If you're a first time player, let me give you a hint. No, a demand. Let's call it Tarvold's Behest! Make sure to buy some antidotes and always have a healthy supply. Poison in this game functions like Pokemon, where you take constant damage as you move around.
Oh, no.
But you lose 1 HP every single tile. So especially in the early game, this can completely drain your HP pool, and it's bloody annoying. Once you've blown a hole through your gill sack, you're summoned by the King of Cornelia, letting you know that a once loyal knight known as Garland has kidnapped his daughter Sarah, and is held up in the Chaos Shrine to the north. Seeing that you're holding the crystals, he's absolutely sure you are the Warriors of Light from Lucan's prophecy, and begs you to save his daughter. So you've got your gear, you've got an objective, and you've got the gumption! Now it's time to set out for real into the JRPG. The general gameplay loop of this game goes like this. Hear about a problem in a town, travel to the nearby dungeon to solve said problem, move on to the next town. Occasionally you'll need to fetch a key item somewhere to trigger an event, but by and large that's the general roadmap of things, and no matter what version of the game you're playing, that's how she goes. All with the overarching goal of destroying the 4 fiends of the elements to restore balance to the planet. The battle system, though, is where the real schmeat gets cooked. And while every version of the game looks like it's functioning the same way, this is where the true differences come to light. And it's for this reason alone, I'm hard-pressed to say that any version is definitive, since they all have their quirks which can cater to your sensibilities better than others. The basis of the battle system is that each of your 4 party members selects something to do on their turn, and once all your choices are made, you and the enemies take turns executing your actions. And if you thought your speed or agility make any difference in the order of execution of these choices, well, you'd be wrong! I've played through this game so many times in many different versions, and the best explanation I can give to what determines turn order is...
No? No. Yes. You're never alone if you're in a line. I don't know.
Yeah, it's seemingly just random. Makes planning out your turn a little difficult for sure, but hey, life's unpredictable, man. Embrace chaos, reject cosmos. The main gist of it is, keep your numbers up, make bad guys' numbers go down. If you've ever played an RPG before, this isn't new information. And since this was made way back in 1987, most would assume this game is incredibly unforgiving and difficult. And well, it is and it isn't. And this is where the version differences really come into play. The battle system in the original NES version is by far the most janky, but I love it. First of all, casting spells in the original game was handled much differently than most modern RPGs. Instead of having mana or MP, spells can only be cast a certain amount of times per day depending on your level, meaning a level 1 white mage can only cast Cure twice before no longer being able to use magic. As they level up, they'll get more casts per day, as well as unlock higher tiers of magic spells. I can already hear you asking, then how do you restore your magic? Well, there's only 2 ways: staying at an inn or using a house, the highest and most expensive tier of portable rest stops, neither of which can be done when you're in a dungeon. So a big part of the strategy of the original game is rationing your spells in order to optimize your path to the boss. Dungeons serve as a grueling test of fortitude and attrition, making sure you have enough healing items and spells stocked up in order for you to get to the end and make it out alive. Hell, the original game didn't even have Phoenix Downs, which revived dead party members. So if you don't have a white mage alive with a life spell, and you get 1 hit KO'd 4 layers deep into a dungeon, guess you're just dead. Hope the rest of the team can cope without you. Also, even if you do have the life spell, don't you dare try to cast this during a battle. You will blow your spell charge and get the message ineffective now, since apparently it's an out of battle spell only. Learned that one the hard way. If that sounds like a pain to you, don't sweat it. The GBA and PSP versions change the way magic works to a traditional MP system, with ethers and elixirs added to the game to go along with it. I personally find this makes the game even easier than it already is, but to each their own. The Pixel Remaster, however, does both, sticking with the spells per day system, but also includes items such as ethers and elixirs to restore those charges wherever you want. The other main difference in the NES version is like half of the spells and stats just flat out don't function. I'm not gonna dig too deep into this because it's a vast ocean of jankery, but a lot of the spells, stats, and even weapons that are supposed to be good against various enemy types just don't actually work as intended. A lot of this stuff is fixed in future versions, so if you're playing those, you should be fine. But one of the worst things about the NES jank is that the intelligence stat for mages, which is supposed to increase their spell power, just doesn't. So spells are always the exact same power level for the entire game. To be honest, the game's easy enough that this isn't a deal breaker. Get smarter all you want, nerd, but your lit will never get litter. I don't know, man, I'm so tired. The biggest complaint thrown at the original version is definitely the ineffective attacks. I talked about this in the top 10 NES video, which I'm sure you've already watched, but we might as well talk about it here too. If an enemy dies in the middle of a turn, and you targeted that enemy with other party members, they will swing at the air and your attack will be ineffective, aka completely wasted. Most RPGs will have those party members just attack another enemy instead of having them completely whiff their shot, and this can be very frustrating for those who grew up in later generations of RPGs. And trust me, I get it, but I will always defend this quirk of the original game. Rather than just mash or hold A to brain dead your way through it, it actively forces you to pay attention and engage in each battle. You can still do this mashing of A, but you'll be wasting a lot more turns, time, and HP by allowing the enemies to clap back more often. You want to chart out your attack patterns in a way that takes out the most enemies the fastest, or the most dangerous enemies first. Make a point to have your big physical damage dealers soften up the HP sponge enemies, but follow that up with your mages either doing minor damage to all, or knocking that last little bit of HP away with a knife or hammer. If you focus fire everyone onto a single enemy, you'll just waste attacks and leave damage on the table. This system gets your brain in the game for every battle, something that a lot of RPGs can really struggle with. The newer releases of this game take this away, with the Pixel Remaster even going one step further and having an auto battle feature which not only repeats your last action, but doubles the speed of battle. Couple this with the fact that your party will never swing at nothing anymore, and you can really blaze through this newest release without much thought or any kind of tension. It's something that I somewhat hold against it, but again, I grew up with the NES original, so I'm used to the archaic battle system. There's something to be said though that the newer versions aren't strictly an upgrade to some people, and the old system still has a lot of gameplay value when compared to the remakes. There's some other stuff about the battle system we'll want to get into later, but for now, let's talk about the adventure itself. Your first goal is to take on Garland, north of Cornelia, where he threatens to knock all yo asses out. Okay, not really, but it has that energy. The battle itself is fairly easy, and that's true for most bosses in the game. The really scary thing is running into a pack of werewolves and not being able to run as they chomp down on you with their toxic teeth. This was the only time in my entire run where I wiped. True story. Once you take Sarah back to Daddy, he knows for certain that you are indeed the Warriors of Light, and lets you know Lucan's prophecy in full. When darkness veils the world, 4 warriors of light shall come. If they cannot gather the shards of light, the darkness will consume all. The 4 crystals will never shine again. Come again? Did that prophecy seriously have an if statement in it? Is Lucan just some dime store psychic trying to make things up and covering his bases whether or not he's right or wrong? Pretty sus, Lucan. I'm on to you, old man. The king lets us know that there's a crystal to the north, which is kind of confusing as well since we already have the crystals, right? Isn't the goal to restore their light? Whatever, this game's mega old. Just treat him like grandpa and appreciate his farts instead of shaming him. The king agrees to build us a bridge in order to help us on our journey, and just as we're ready to leave, Princess Sarah stops us to give us her lute, something Garland also wanted when he captured her. And no joke, I honestly thought this was supposed to be a flute, but they forgot to add the F in the original game. I had no idea a lute was a tiny pear-shaped guitar, but I did know that my party members' names couldn't exceed 4 characters. Being a kid was so stupidly fun. If you talk to Sarah again, I think she's hinting at us staying with her and Cornelia and abandoning our quest? Is she hitting on me? Is she hitting on us? Oh, yeah. Oh, no! We have crystals to light up and fiends to lay down, not princesses. And with that, the Warriors of Light cross the Cornelian Bridge and start their journey proper. We hear the absolutely iconic main theme of Final Fantasy, which at its greatest power can turn a grown man into a blubbering mess of emotions. I've never been so weak as to become such a thing, however. Oh, I couldn't tell for sure, but forget it. Oh, damn, this song, man. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh. Oh, man. Oh, I love this song so much. You don't like Cloud? Oh, I think Cloud is the best. Damn it! Oh, fuck. It was gonna happen. Every fucking time. Oh, man. Final Fantasy's so good! Something's fucky. Oh. Oh. Oh, man. Oh, man. Listen, Kings, you've got emotions. Let them out. The next whole third of the game from this point on is a bit of a fetch quest trade sequence. Wandering around the continent, you come across some notable NPCs, such as Bicky the Dicky, a pirate captain terrorizing a local village, Matoya Jackson, who's stumbling around her cave home blind since someone stole her eye, Narek the dwarf, who is a pyrotechnic maniac, and Astos, the Diogenes syndrome-suffering dark elf. Bouncing around between the various towns and talking to the NPCs, you learn about who needs what and where you need to get them, including nabbing a pirate ship to sail the seas, and eventually leading you to the game's first dungeon, the Marsh Cave. This place will definitely test you in your ability to persevere. Monsters here can stunlock your team, poison them, and the terrifying Pisco demons can drop your party members very quickly if you're not prepared. I'm not gonna lie, I think this is probably the hardest dungeon in the game, only because you lack a lot of the late game tools and abilities that ease the challenge in the late game. Thankfully though, there's a cheeky way to make this dungeon a breeze. In most versions of the game, heading east of Provoca and venturing all the way to the top of this peninsula will spawn monsters that are meant to be encountered much later in the game. If you've got your hands on a mage or two with Fyra or Blizzara, you can potentially wipe the floor with a group of these enemies and score some huge experience points in Gil. This is colloquially known as the Peninsula of Power. You can throw down a 10 or 2 and keep it going until you're satisfied with your booty, and spend your massive wads of Gil on some armor and high level spells, making the trek downwards through the Marsh Cave a much easier romp. The Pixel Remaster had the audacity to quote unquote fix this problem, and the spawns at the Peninsula of Power are identical to the surrounding area. But if you still want to get that feeling of getting overpowered without much time investment, you can always slap on a 4x multiplier, Gil, and XP boost in the console versions. But this doesn't feel nearly as satisfying since there's no risk involved in trying your luck against these overpowered obstacles. The Peninsula of Power was always fun to do because it was a huge risk that could go badly very quickly with some unfavorable luck. The boosts are a nice feature, I guess, but again, it just doesn't scratch that same itch for me. Once you make your way to the dankest level of the Marsh Cave, you'll find a chest being guarded by 4 powerful Pisco demons, defeating which will give you the crown. This crown can be used to challenge Astos, who gives you Matoya's crystal eye, and oh wait! Is this the crystal the king was talking about? Matoya's cave is literally north of Cornelia. Even if I'm reaching, I'm committing to this headcanon. Anyways, after you Mr. Beast Matoya by restoring her eyesight, she gives you the Jolt Tonic, which is then used to revive the sleeping elf prince, who then bequeaths you with the Mystic Key. Throughout the various castles and dungeons you've gone through so far were these locked doors, which can now be opened with said key. If you want, you can go revisit these areas to grab some loot, though none of it is super important aside from the nitro powder locked away in Cornelia Castle. With this, you're finally able to break through this donut-shaped opening section and have the dwarves blow a hole through the side of the landlocked body of water, allowing you to venture into the much wider world and start your real mission, defeating the 4 fiends. Now the game opens up a little more in that you have a couple choices of where you'd like to venture next. Immediately outside of the starting area though, is Melmond, a dilapidated town being cursed by the Earth Fiend Lich who is rotting the very soil. It's also home to some extremely important level 5 magic spells such as Life, Hilara, Viraga, and Teleport. And it's with these spells especially that the game starts to ease up a bit on the difficulty curve. I can't stress enough just how important and informative townsfolk are in this game. Only a handful of them will waste your time with generic phrases, while most will point you directly in the direction you need to go, or at the very least drop hints about things you'll need to know later. And if they've got an actual name like Dr. Une here, you best remember where they are and what they have to say. To find the Lich, you first need to head downwards through the Earth Cave and face off against the Vampire, a mini-boss of sorts, who goes down incredibly easy, especially with a fat Firaga to the face, or just a couple of taps from your warrior. Behind his charred corpse, you'll find a star ruby and a stone slab that you can't get past yet. So the only way out is to walk your ass all the way back to the entrance. Yeah, for real. Now's a good time to talk about another couple additions to the Pixel Remaster. Clicking in the right stick will turn random encounters completely off, relieving you from the stress of being ambushed or wiped out. And while it's a nice feature, I tried to use it as sparingly as I could since it absolutely kills all the tension the game has. If you're never going to be attacked or ambushed, there's really nothing to fear and thus no satisfaction in clearing a dungeon. In instances like this though, where you're just backtracking through the exact same places, I don't mind sprinting my ass out of here. You're missing out on precious Gil and XP too by doing this, but I suppose you could always put those boosts on to make up for it. The Pixel Remaster also adds a map you can open at any time to get a full layout of any floor you're on, including showing all the treasure chests in the area, so you're way less likely to get lost or even run into a dead end. And you can also move diagonally. Huh, neat. The older games also had trap tiles, which automatically spawned a powerful enemy if you ever stepped onto a specific spot, usually reserved for key choke points by doors or in front of treasure chests. The Pixel Remaster instead swaps these for weird little hooded guys instead, that you can choose whether or not to engage with. That, and they hide some monsters directly in the chest to test your worthiness of the bounty. The key point here is that the trap tiles are gone. And in the Earth Cave especially, you could both get lost and encounter an entire hallway that is nothing but trap tiles, driving you insane as you encounter a powerful enemy every single step you take. Basically, if you've ever felt at all intimidated by this game and thought it would be too much of a retro RPG struggle, play the Pixel Remaster. It has more than enough quality of life improvements and boosts to get you through the game without much effort, and it's very short, especially with the speed of this remake. My entire playtime was just shy of 10 hours, and that's including a lot of pauses for recording notes, as well as about an hour of trying to find the super boss, but more on him later. There's never been a better time to play this for the first time and jump into the series, no cap. Handing over the Star Ruby to this massive golem will give you access to Sada's cave, who gives you the Earth Rod capable of opening a passageway beneath that stone slab. Once you encounter the Lich, he looks extremely intimidating, but goes down super easy to some fire and Dia spells. Earth Fiend Lich, more like Earth Fiend Bitch, am I right? Got it. With the Earth Crystal restored, it's time to head to the eastern edge of the map and enter Crescent Lake. Here you'll find the Circle of Sages, including the before mentioned Lucan, who created the prophecy the king mentioned earlier. They will give you some lore on the world, the fiends, and eventually give you a canoe which allows you to traverse rivers, something that your pirate ship couldn't do. Hell, you can now even dock your ship onto a river, which increases the places you can go on the world map. Listen to old people ramble, kids, and one day, they might give you a boat. Now that the Warriors of Light have become a 4-man rowing team, you can access the Gurgu volcano where the fire fiend Merilith lies in wait. But before you go there, you might want to take a detour to the north and find yourself in the Ice Cavern. The monsters here can be a little tough, with some spamming party blasting ice spells or even instant death, but the reward is so worth it. Are you guys familiar with the prize for finding all 900 Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild? Well, that was inspired by this item right here, the Floater. Pause for uncontrollable laughter. This thing is used to obtain one of the Final Fantasy series staples, the airship. And oh man, is this such an incredible moment. Located in the desert to the south, you can raise this thing out of the sand with your floater, and from this point on enjoy the sweet, breezy freedom of the sky. No more random encounters, no more looking for docks. The entire world is open for you to freely explore. There's a reason why Final Fantasy fans, and hell, video game fans in general, always love finally getting access to a good airship. It represents your freedom. It makes you feel safe. It can get you from A to B in no time. It allows you to really absorb the scope of the world you're in and lets you uncover its secrets. It's your whip, and I always see it as my fully powered 5th party member. With this, you can go anywhere you wish, but we've still got a volcano to dive into. Enter Mount Gulg, or the Gurgu Volcano, a place where magma monsters creep, fire dragons sleep, and the soles of your feet weep. Yeah, so like half of the dungeon is just coated in magma that deals damage as you walk over it. It's a fun mechanic. Once you get to the bottom of the volcano though, you face off against the 6th-armed snake hottie Merilith, who goes down especially fast if you manage to find the ice sword in the dungeon and slap it onto your meatiest warrior.
Do you see what you get?
Merilith!
Do you see what you get when you mess with the warrior?
With 2 of the crystals now restored to power, it's time to head to the northern continents. But between these 2 continents lies a Hawaii-like cluster of isles called the Cardian Islands, which houses a society of dragons. You'll also find the series' famous Bahamut, who is leading as their king. The dragons in the area let you know that he's looking for a token of courage to be presented to him. And one of the dragons mentions a Citadel of Trials located northeast of here. So it's time to hop back in the airship and make a beeline to the Citadel. Alright, let's park this thing and, okay, wait, okay, no, what was it? That was a tree? What is this, wetlands? Where do, okay, where's the parking space? Okay, yeah, so remember that sense of freedom I talked about with the airship? Need to add a bit of an asterisk to that. The airship can only land on plains. No forests, no wetlands, no sand, rivers, mountains, nada. And of course, most of the latter half of the game is absolutely covered in anything but plains. For a few of the notable locations, you'll need to find the closest single tile of plains to land on and hoof it from there. So while the airship is still awesome and can let you discover new places, most of the time you're using those lava-laced legs of yours to actually traverse to where you need to be. Guess they didn't want to completely trivialize the overworld monsters and give a reason for cottages and tents to exist. The Citadel of Trials has some nasty monsters and a teleportation maze which can be a bit tricky. So it's time yet again for Tarbold's Behest! Just always take the southernmost warp. It's always correct. And while we're at it, make absolutely sure to grab the treasure in this place, because from this point on in the game, you'll be coming across some of the most incredibly overpowered and important equipment that the game has to offer. But not for your characters to wear. Oh, no. Stuff like the gauntlets and healing staff are actually usable in battle, and they cast spells for free, infinitely. And not only that, but they can be used by anyone. So now even your warrior can drop Thundaras on a group of enemies to make nuking a screen of multiple monsters an absolute breeze. Or have 3 out of 4 of your entire party spam healing staff and healing helm items to get free party heals deep into the depths of a dungeon. Just leave one weaker monster alive and spam these things as much as you want. Obviously, these items are OP as hell, but for many reasons I've already stated, they're especially busted in the NES original. Because there are no elixirs or ethers and your inventory is capped at 99 weak-ass heal potions, the ability to infinitely heal your party deep in a dungeon is beyond useful. So beyond useful, it's broken and kind of ruins any challenge the game had left. Keep in mind too that the intelligence stat doesn't work in the original game, so any character using these items is going to be just as potent as any white or black mage doing the same thing. In the games where intelligence functions properly, like the Pixel remaster, it's kind of funny that a black mage who has the highest intelligence can use the heal items better than a white mage can. Though keep in mind, these are mid-level spells, and the most powerful spells can still only be used the standard way. Your low IQ Oonga Boongas won't be able to use these very well, but still nice to be able to do some AoE damage for free whenever you want. I mean, there's even one item that casts Scourge, a spell that instantly kills all the enemies on the screen. It's not 100% accurate, but still, damn! Anyway, at the end of the Citadel of Trials, you find a rat tail. Oh neat, gross. This is the thing that Bahamut wants though, and we ask that you please not judge him for it.
Don't think I'm weird when I tell you this. I promise you won't call me weird. I want to...
Filthy rat's tail.
What? Yeah, I'm not weird. I'm pragmatic. I'm serious. I'm not weird. Think about it.
For your efforts though, Bahamut gives you the greatest gift of all. A full-on class promotion for all of your party members. Your little boys and girls become men and women. One might call it a Baha Mitzvah, as it were. The warrior becomes a knight, capable of equipping the best armor and weapons in the game, and gains the ability to cast low-level white spells. The monk becomes the master. He pretty much remains unchanged, but still hit things real good, and looks like he escaped from Def Leppard. The thief becomes the ninja, and by that I mean the thief becomes useful. Able to deal out a ton of physical damage and equip the best sword in the game, the ninja can also use low-level black magic Ninpo style, including the incredibly overpowered haste spell. Each of the respective mages become wizards, allowing them to use all magic within their schools except the red wizard, who is still locked out of the level 7 and 8 spells. But really, the aesthetic change is what stands out here. Look at these colossi! It feels like such a monumental moment, immediately following a similar feeling with getting the airship. You feel unstoppable at this point, and I always get really excited to finish off the final 2 fiends at this point in the game. Speaking of which, it's time to get our water crystal hydrated. In order to even enter the Sunken Shrine, there's a couple fetch quests that have to be done by buying a bottled fairy from a desert caravan and setting them free in the far-off town of Gaia. This fairy will give you the Oxyale, which allows you to breathe underwater. And with that, you're able to get inside this rickety-looking barrel thing as a creepy ghost girl floats away. Okay. Then you arrive at my favorite dungeon in the game. Why is it my favorite? Well, listen. Yeah, can you believe I went this long without talking about the soundtrack? I don't care which version of this game you're playing, this soundtrack holds up. Nobuo Uematsu is simply put the greatest video game composer of all time. I truly believe that. The man has made so many compositions that have captured the hearts of millions, and it all started here. Well, okay, maybe not literally, but it certainly was his most notable early work, which set him on a meteoric career making music for most of the future Final Fantasy titles, among others. The melodies in the soundtrack are so memorable and so catchy, and a lot of them are still used in reference to this very day, like the Victory theme, the Crystal Prelude, and the main theme. But man, I can't even put to words properly how much I love this entire soundtrack, though I might as well try. The overworld theme is beautiful, uplifting, heroic, and inspiring. Tell you what, if you ever move to a brand new town or city and you decide to walk out your door and explore this new surrounding where you'll be living, pop some headphones on and blast this on your way out the door and watch the biggest fattest smile crawl across your face. It's just exhilarating. The town theme is one of the most peaceful, comforting pieces on the soundtrack. Pair that with the jaunty shop theme and the bouncy menu theme, and blowing all of your gill and navigating the menus becomes a treat for the ears. The ship and the airship themes also provide a lively, upbeat tune to really sell the speed increase and newly found sense of horizon-busting freedom. And I could never forget the battle theme. Man, oh man. I don't know if I would call it my favorite track, but it is by far the one I can recall the most when I think of Final Fantasy I. Sure, it's probably because it's the song you hear the most, but there's something beyond that. The intro bass riff when you first get encountered gets passed down to future titles in their battle themes, so it's kind of like there's a little part of Final Fantasy I in those games as well. And while I love all those battle themes too, I'll never be able to forget this first rendition. And my god, did they go so fucking hard with it in the Pixel remaster! The shredding guitar, the blasting trumpets, those drums! With every remake and iteration, I find the soundtrack gets better and better, and the Pixel remaster is currently the peak of quality. They even added some additional measures into existing songs to make the quick loops less of an annoyance, and it's gorgeous. Multiple boss themes were also added to give some extra tension to the admittedly piss-easy fights, since the original just used the battle theme for every fight, including the finale. But let me tell you, the Pixel Remaster soundtracks alone are worth the price of admission. They did an absolutely phenomenal job with these remixes, and I've been listening to them non-stop. Also, please buy Theatrhythm Final Bar Line if you have as big of a fetish for Final Fantasy music as I do. It's so good! I've got one minor nitpick. In the music player, Sunken Shrine is mislabeled. Here it is in the music player. And here it is actually in the shrine itself. Trash game, literally unplayable, too much water. Anyway, let's get back on track. After finding a captive society of mermaids in the sunken shrine, they beg you to take care of Kraken and allow you to take a huge hoard of treasure, which includes the Rosetta Stone, a key item that's necessary for later. After crack-a-lacking the Kraken and restoring the water crystal, we gotta make a quick pit stop north of Onrak to find a hidden cave behind a waterfall. We all know that any game that includes a waterfall better hide something behind it or risk being thrown directly in the fucking trash. You find an out-of-place futuristic robot who gives you the warp cube, a key item needed in the next dungeon. Now, it's time to head to the game's final town, Lufenia. Lufenia is populated by a race of people who used to live in futuristic fortresses in the sky, but have since been relegated back down to the surface thanks to Tiamat the Wind Fiend taking over their floating fortress. Also of note here is that in every Final Fantasy game, there's always a character known as Sid, and a lot of the times he has some connection to the airship. While the original NES game had no such character, the Lufenians here will let you know that there was once a man named Sid who did in fact create the very airship you're using. Neat! He's also like the overseeing god of the Dissidia games or something? And the Lufenians themselves become very important lore-wise in Stranger of Paradise. But I don't have time to talk about these games yet. This script is long enough as it is. The only problem with this is that the Lufenians only speak their language, and well, we don't. Thankfully, that Rosetta Stone can be brought to Une way back in Melman, who will teach it to you, allowing you to converse with the Lufenians. If you do, they will give you the Chime, the last key item needed to enter the Mirage Tower. This tower, located in the middle of the desert, will allow you to ascend up into the flying fortress itself, where Tiamat looms. And not only does Tiamat loom here, but also what some, including myself, consider this game's super boss, Warmech. He has an incredibly low chance of spawning in the final hallway of the dungeon, and I mean really low. It took me like 45 minutes to an hour of grinding out battles before finally confronting him. But that was probably a blessing in disguise since I gained a ton of experience and levels. And yeah, this dude will waste you! I never encountered him in the NES version, but in the Pixel remaster, which I consider the easiest, he still messed me up. I managed to squeak by barely intact, and it felt good to finally take this guy down. While being miles high in the sky, you're able to look down at the planet and see that in the center of the 4 locations where you defeated the elemental fiends lies the Chaos Shrine. Ain't that interesting? Also, while you're here, make sure to pick up the adamantite item before moving on. It's not necessary, but it's certainly worth the detour. At the peak of the fortress lies the wind fiend Tiamat, and well... no, that tracks. She ain't that hard either. I got nothing interesting to say, she dead. Probably didn't help that I was massively overleveled due to the Warmac hunt, but with all 4 crystals powered up, it's time to enter the final dungeon of the game. After ensuring all your party members have all the proper spells, equipment, and item rations you could possibly carry, because this one is a gauntlet. If you picked up the adamantite, you can visit the dwarves who will forge you Excalibur, the most powerful sword in the game. Almost. This thing is a beast, and the sprite in battle is just ridiculous. Keep in mind, only a knight can use this weapon, so if you don't have one, feel free to slam this claymore down on the local mom and pop store for an extra bit of gil. Venturing back to the Chaos Shrine, you're able to actually speak to the bats that were in Garland's room. Turns out they were the Sky Warriors, Lufenians who were sent out to investigate the fiends and the crystals in order to defeat the source of the world's ruin. Apparently, the 4 fiends have been funneling the light of the crystals through the black crystal here in this shrine, which is connected to this exact same shrine 2,000 years in the past. Someone there is using this energy to distort things in this time. So you know what that means!
Time heist?
Yeah, so not a whole lot of people know that the original Final Fantasy actually involved advanced technology, time travel, and the now normalized mixing of medieval fantasy and science fiction. Most never make it to this point, or to the Lufenians, but Final Fantasy has always had this blending of genres, which I love. Time travel I'm not usually a big fan of, since I find that unless some really strict rules are laid down, it can trivialize a lot of the narrative. However, this story is so basic, it doesn't really bother me. And Final Fantasy doesn't really do much time travel shenanigans in the mainline series, and won't again until at least Final Fantasy VIII. Stepping through the Black Crystal, you arrive in the Chaos Shrine 2,000 years ago, and it's pristine compared to the derelict dump it is in our time. This is the final dungeon, and it's made up of various floors coinciding with the different elemental fiends. On the first floor, you're stopped by another stone slab, but whipping out your F-less flute allows you to shred out the crystal prelude and unveil the path forward. Initially, you'll run into familiar monsters you fought in the Earth Cave, then Mount Gull, the Sunken Shrine, and the Sky Fortress. Not only that, but at the end of these floors, you'll yet again face off against the fiends, who have been juiced up and powered up to make for a more interesting fight. Still not that interesting, but Lich can nuke you now.
Good for her.
And it's time for one last hit of Tarvold's Behest! When you're on the air floor, make sure to venture to the lower right-hand corner of the room before progressing, because down here, you'll find the actual ultimate weapon of the game, the Masamune. I always give this to my ninja if I've got one. Since mages can't really swing it well, masters are better unarmed, and your knight is typically wielding Excalibur already. I suppose if you have a red wizard, he could have it too, whatever. Finally, at the bottom of the Chaos Shrine awaiting our arrival is Garland. Yeah, the dude who messed with us day one has been behind this whole mess the entire time. He was sent back here 2,000 years in the past in order to send the fiends to the future. And if either die, the other just sends them back, creating a never-ending loop of fuck. Since we just killed all 4 fiends here now, if we can defeat Garland, it will end the loop forever. But he's not really Garland anymore. He is now Chaos. Whoo, baby, this fight could be a doozy, if you're playing the remakes. In the original, Chaos had a pitiful 2,000 HP, but since the GBA version, they beefed this up to a chonky 20,000 HP, with the ability to cast Kiraja to heal 10k at a time. My go-to strat is using the Giant's Gloves on my physical attackers while casting haste on them simultaneously, and having my White Wizard keep the HP totals up and the buffs flowing. Then allow the muscles to just shred Chaos to pixelated bits. Works every time. Side note here, I highly recommend listening to the Dwayne and Brando song based on Final Fantasy. So well done and hilarious. And because of that song, every time I fight Chaos, I always think. And that's the show. Quests complete. The epilogue starts to roll and tells us of what the future holds for the Light Warriors and the planet. And they keep rolling. And they keep rolling. And then more is added. And I love the background here, but these credits, whew, they can really drag out, let me tell you. The Pixel Remaster credits lasted a total of like 16 minutes, for God's sakes. Ugh. But hey, the real journey was the fiends we killed along the way. What an incredible journey from start to finish. I'm still dumbfounded by how well this game holds up in so many aspects. Music, gameplay, pacing and flow, and just this overall sense of growing together as a group through this epic journey. It's basic as hell, don't get me wrong, but sometimes that's what we need in this ever-complicating world we live in. If you've never played Final Fantasy 1 before, I'm gonna suggest the Pixel Remaster. It's got so many quality of life improvements and the best version of an already stellar soundtrack. As for which version is my favorite, well, I think I've got a soft spot for the PSP version. It's got some incredible visuals with a lot of extra content thrown in. The only nitpicks I have really is that the class upgrade in this version doesn't look all that cool, and I prefer the spells per day magic system rather than MP, though I'll always love the NES original. But like I said before, you can't go wrong with any of them. Pick it up and give it a try. It's a very short time investment and can give you a great sense of history of one of gaming's biggest franchises, especially if you're a fan of the future titles. Final Fantasy is my favorite series of all time, and I have this little 8-bit adventure to thank for that foundation. And because of that, I'm putting Final Fantasy exactly where it belongs, in the S tier. Huge thanks as always go out to my supporters on Patreon, including all of those shown on screen, along with James Cummings, Connor Binder, Redmond, Elise Rococo, Pira Kong, The Wise Vivi, and Luigi Rules. You guys are just too baha much. If you want to support the show, you can head on over to patreon.com/TarvaldsQuest and check out the various tiers and rewards, which could include a custom-made sprite head made by me in the credits of every episode, or choosing a song in the next video game trivia episode. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next quest.